Good afternoon, everybody. First, let me thank you all for joining today's webinar. We're going to take a look at workflow that works and productivity using the 2020 Office products. Let's take a look at what you can expect to learn today. We're going to cover a few specific topics here. One of them is how to create a quick and general concept of a space, how to build a specification with accuracy, leveraging visual validation, and then streamlining changes at any point in your design process. So the good news is, whether you are a CAP user or whether you are a Giza user, this is going to apply to both of you. I know in webinars sometimes we focus a little bit more on CAP than on Giza, but as I said, the good news is the workflow, the functionality that you'll be seeing today, it applies to actually both applications. So I'm going to go ahead and start by looking at how to work with the need for a quick general concept of a space. Now, many of you have visual impression. It's one of the tools we're definitely going to be talking about today. But I think a lot of our users see visual impression as really more of a rendering tool, but it can do so much more than that for you, okay? So hopefully I'm going to educate you a little bit on that today. So, quick general concept of a space. So let's say that the customer kind of wants to take a look at things and get an idea maybe of finishes or the look that can apply to the product. You also might be working with the space plan and you want to quickly pop things up into 3D. Well, obviously in Giza and CAP you can do that, but it's usually just a hidden line 3D. So we're going to show you a little bit how visual impression can aid you in that. And also potentially you could be working with an architect in the early stages of a large commercial project and you want to be able to show them some ideas of potential workstations or furniture collections that they're going to be working with. So, in front of you right now, looking at CAP, I've actually gone in and pre-set up some things for you guys to be able to look at. So one thing that I always like to point out and often overlooked when working with visual impression and more how to better organize your drawing as far as how you want to feed it into visual impression is being able to define scenes. I know a lot of people may not be aware of it, or they'll simply click the button from visual impression in the drawing and it pushes the whole drawing into visual impression, but that's not necessarily what you want to do because you may need to work on very specific areas. So the lines you already see drawn around some of these furniture items is scenes that have already been defined, but I'll quickly walk through one. The drawing boundaries or the scene definitions, they do go on their own layer. Same thing with CAP or with Giza as it is in CAP. So what's nice is even if you put these in here, you're going to be able to turn those layers off or that layer off at any time so it doesn't clutter your drawing. So as I want to draw a boundary. And I promise you, I'll try not to mess up too much, but I cannot guarantee that. So let's just go ahead and define a scene here. And then once I select the boundary, it doesn't have to be pretty. All it has to do is incorporate everything that you want to be working with. And also, unlike the CAP bounds in the software, these boundaries can actually overlap. So if you need to include some items in two different scenes, you can certainly do that. So we're just going to give it a name. You can also give it a description. And I'm going to go ahead and select Finish button here. So that is very simply how we do this. So for a general concept, I am not going to take this into a worksheet because I don't really need to pick any of the final finishes or anything like that. This is just really early in your project cycle. So you have a little icon here to launch to visual impression. Exact same thing if you're in Giza. And so we'll give it just a few seconds here. So here is, this is one of the scenes that we just identified. Remember I did the work area 23. So it actually brings it in. A couple things inside of visual impression here, just so you know. I did say that it's early in the concept. We haven't done anything with finishes. If you do see finishes on furniture, it is simply because that manufacturer has chosen to put presentation finishes on here. So these are not selected finishes. This is just to kind of make it look nicer when it comes into visual impression, so you don't have a lot of white and a lot of gray when it comes in. Okay? So what can I do here? So right now it's in a room. So some of the things that I can do here is that I can hide all the room architecture. So if I actually just want to show this in white space, which is often a question we'll get, we can do something like this. So at this point, if I wanted to actually hit the HQ and render it a little bit and then be able to save this off and send it, I can certainly do that. One thing I always like to point out is that if white space doesn't quite work for you, you can always just select the floor and then put a material on it so that it will, I think sometimes it'll actually make the furniture pop a little bit nicer for you. So let's just put something a little white here. We'll just go to HQ. So as you can see, I think it actually gives the furniture a little bit more definition. So just like I said, a little tip here is that you can easily turn architecture on and off by simply clicking a button. And we'll go back to SQ. Okay. So from the drawing, this is the easiest part that I can do from the drawing within, in the beginning of your the process. So easy workflow. You want to be able to show the client something. Simply launch it into visual impression, and you're good to go. Like I said, this is nicer, I think, to present this way rather than just a standard hidden line drawing inside of your CAP or your Giza product. The next thing that we wanted to talk about was building a specification with accuracy inside of the 2020 products that you have. The good news for you guys is we now support over 209 different furniture manufacturers, and we keep that content as updated as possible, hence the DVDs that you guys get every month. That is actually the first step in here. Now I'm going to go ahead and close visual impression. And at this point, I'm going to actually hit the discard button because I do not want to save anything from visual impression into the drawing. So the accurate specification, it's a must with any project. If you're more concerned with space planning and specification to generate an order, then the rendering is important. But it can be secondary to what you do. You could be working with a lead designer who provides you with a drawing and needs to create a specification, including all the finishes to prepare for the customer or the salesperson. Or you have an existing design and specification, and now the customer would like to see, the rendering of it and see what it looks in VI with all of the finishes. So typically the way that we would work with this is you would have your space plan, and you would select an icon here that allows me to generate the worksheet from this. So we're going to go ahead and go through this process. And I'm sure you guys have done this a ton of times, so this is nothing new to you. So we're going to go ahead and select Next. And Next. So we're just going to let it generate. So as I said, we've got all the parts in here. They have all the appropriate information on it, so everything is going to count when we go to that specification. I'm going to tell it to open up the file in 2020 Worksheet. And we have our worksheet. Okay, so let's talk about finishes and how to work with finishes as far as, visual options, visual validation of finishes. Use visual impression for that. Like I said, visual impression is more than just a rendering tool. So we can't ever emphasize that enough, because a lot of people look at visualization for only rendering, and they don't necessarily want to do rendering with every project. But it can feed into the workflow of a project beyond just the rendering side of it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to hit the Visualize button. And we're going to work on that little work area I defined. And we did really good. Our visual impression came up. So we're going to go ahead and select our room size to start. Let's let it finish. Okay. So let's work with some finishes here. So inside of the scene here, we're going to make a few changes. For those of you who use visual impression on a regular basis, you understand materials and changing materials, but we'll walk through it for people who may not do it on a regular basis or haven't had an opportunity. So I can come in here at any time and change finishes, and it allows me to visually validate the finishes that I am selecting are the right finishes. Obviously within Worksheet, smaller images, a lot of textual information, and for me, I might really want to see what this is going to look like on here. So I can come in here and select a finish. These finishes are the exact same finishes you are selecting in Worksheet, but they, as I said, are more visual. So I can come in here and let's make a choice. And we're just going to change some things real quickly. So I've selected everything. I'm going to go down here to more items. Fast, efficient, I'm going to tell it to apply to all occurrences of this, and I did it just like that. Okay, let me change the top here real quick because I just want to make a few changes so we can feed this back. So let's just do, once again, I'm going to do all occurrences, but I think I also might do any other items in here that can accept this finish. Once again, I can quickly push those finishes to the other items in here, always knowing that this is checking against the manufacturer's catalog. So inside of here, inside of visual impression, it will not allow me to apply a finish that is not valid. Double checking the catalog, we're going to get an accurate specification. So I've made some changes here. So now what can I do at this point? I launched this out of Worksheet. If this is something, if these are finishes that I know that I'm going to want to use to present to the client, but it may not be their final choices, I can come over to the Save Copy, and I can actually save a copy of this worksheet. So maybe this is green finishes I want to show. So now I've simply saved off a copy of the worksheet. I haven't modified my original worksheet because I don't know at this point in my process if these are the finishes that they're going to actually sign off on. So I can also come in here and pick something completely different. So if I wanted to, maybe show them a completely different, whoops, let's go right up here. Maybe I want to do something in an orange, and we'll just do the chrome here again, and we'll simply push it out and apply it. So just like that, it's easy to change. Once again, I could come up here and save a copy, and I could save that worksheet off as, say, maybe this is my green color or my orange colorway or whatever. So then I can take those two different choices or whatever and be able to present that to my customer. So let me go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to apply this. So I just hit apply, and what it did is it applied those changes back to my worksheet. So we're going to go ahead and close out of visual impression. And we're going to take a look here. So inside a worksheet, I'm sure you guys, for those that use it on a very regular basis, understand some of the icons that you see within the worksheet. So you'll notice here, those stools that we just applied finishes to, it now has a check mark. So we know what the check mark means is that we have fully specified that product. So workflow, if you want to go into visual impression, visually validate those finishes, then apply those finishes back to your worksheet. It's just another way to work between the two and to be able to fully populate that worksheet. Within your worksheet, there are some tools, and I think one might have been updated or added last year that maybe many of you may not be familiar with. There is a tool that we've had for a while in here called Validate. This is another way that you can check your worksheet for accurate specification of each of the items, especially when you're working with a larger drawing. So what this does, let me make this a little bigger. It's going to tell you which items are incomplete. It also verifies your list price, so if it's less than 0, your purchase price is less than 0, and your sell price is less than 0, it's going to flag that because that's going to be a problem because you are not going to make any money on that, okay? Also, if there's a quantity of 0, it's also going to tell you that. Now you'll notice our stool 1 that we did, it is complete. So I'm trying to think. So, yep. So that's what this is what the Validate Worksheet dialog is for, or what that button is for. So if you've seen it there, now you know how to use it. So we're going to go ahead and close this. And then I'm going to go ahead and minimize my worksheet here for just a moment, and we're going to go back to the drawing. So one of the other features one of the things in the manufacturer content that I wanted to show you guys that will also help you, I guess, validate that certain option choices you're making are correct. Like I said, once again, you pick the options in worksheet, but sometimes, like I said, it's very textual, so you're not able to really get a good idea as to whether or not you have actually specified that correctly. So we're going to launch back into visual impression again. If you guys notice, there's a theme here, a lot of visual impression. So we're going to take a look at one of the scenes that I had defined in there to kind of talk to you a little bit about structural options. Manufacturers will engage us on certain products within their product lines that they might want to enhance with something called structural options. So in this case, I'm looking at this Knoll Life Chair. Now when I select that and go to Materials, I'm going to actually zoom in here a little bit so you can see what's happening here. So it's asking me to choose this back, and then I'm actually going to specify a seat topper for this. When I select the seat topper, you'll notice the graphic's actually going to change. So it added the seat topper for me automatically. And we're just going to use a standard material here. But my next choice here is whether or not I want a back topper. So in this case, I'm going to tell it I want a back topper. So graphically, it adds that component for me. And then we're going to go ahead and select finishes for it. So now this is another way, with the use of visual impression, to visually validate what it is that you're, the selections that you're making. And then at this point, I could actually save this off to worksheet, and it would be fully specified the way that we want that. And then once again, this would allow me to render this, save this, and be able to show my customer exactly what it is that they're going to be getting. Okay, so let's go ahead and I want to also quickly talk about scenes. Remember, we defined scenes. For people who don't normally use them, they've seen this word scene up here, but they didn't really know exactly what it was for if you're launching the entire drawing. But this is where you would actually select your scenes. You'll notice I've gone from gray to a color picture. So as soon as you go in here and you start working with anything within that scene, the next time you go in, you're going to see a preview that makes more sense to you other than just just the grayscale there. So, okay, so we're going to go ahead and minimize, or let's just close out of visual impression again. Oh, I have to select something first here, sorry. So one thing that I really want to stress here is, as we said, workflow. You'll notice I started in CAP. I was able to click a button to go to visual impression, or I was able to click a button to go to Worksheet, but then I was also within Worksheet able to click a button to go to visual impression. There is sometimes a misconception that CAP, Giza, Worksheet, visual impression, that it's not a fluid workflow, I guess, and that there's 3 different applications. But as you can see from just the switching or the changing that I've done here, they all work seamlessly together. So I just want to make sure that you know, that whole concept or the idea of that there's all these different tools, they really all work as one. So a couple other things that I want to be able to cover here with you as far as leveraging some of the tools that we have and improving, like I know productivity is such a big thing, and so everything you learn, I think, it certainly helps you with all of that. And because I know a lot of our users have not had the ability to have some formal training, we sometimes miss some of these things. And that's what I love about these webinars whenever we do these, is because I always hope somebody walks away with something they didn't know before. So like I said, the webinars are great. I encourage you to keep coming to them because you can learn so much from them. We're going to take another look here at Worksheet, because some things that I want to talk about inside of Worksheet is that for many people, Worksheet can be a little overwhelming sometimes. There's you know, the columns, and there's a lot of toolbar buttons, and you look at this and they're not really sure, you know, how to work with this. I often see this, or we often see it with the younger designers that come into this industry, and they're not familiar with, or they're not comfortable. They don't like working in a spreadsheet program like Worksheet to apply finishes because it's not very exciting to them. So some things that to let you know about, some things that you could possibly change to help with that is that there's preferences settings in here. I don't know if many of you have worked with them, but there's a little icon up here. Once I select that, I can actually go into preferences, and there's a whole display section. So we can change colors. We can change the font. We can change the height of your column. So if you guys ever struggle with not being able to see a full description of in your product number fields or in your options or attribute information, you can actually change the height. So I'm just going to do something a little different here. So let's just say I'm going to change it to pink. So nope, hold on a second here. I'm going to set it back to default. I want to go to options, and I'm going to change it to hot pink. Okay. As I said, I can also change the height of that, but I can also come down over here and let's just pick. Let's see if we can pick a little different font here. And then once you change this, it does save that setting. And let's just make it a little bigger because my eyes are a little bit older, so we're going to move it up. Let's just say to a 12 and apply it. Pretty funky. Okay. So you can be sitting next to someone who's using Worksheet, and it can look completely different than theirs. So also columns, you know, you can customize these to best fit the way that you guys work on a day-to-day basis. The templates are there for you guys to be able to set up and to be able to share. So if you're not aware of it, the Worksheet templates, once created, can be shared with anybody else on your team. And as far as the report designs are the exact same way. Somebody sets them up, or if you have some team member who's really excited about setting these things up, they can do that, and they can also share all of those with everybody else in the team. So you create it once, and it saves a whole lot of work for everybody else. So let's, not a fan of the pink, so I'm going to go in here and change it. It's just a little bit bright for me. So we're going to set it back to default, and let's just make our font a little bit smaller at this point. Okay. Let's talk about some change processes within any project. We all know it can be a daily struggle. Customers want one thing one day, and then the next day they're looking for something completely different. So how do we work with change? So a couple things here. We always say that the work or that the drawing is master. So anything, any changes, everything are typically done within the drawing, and then pushed back into either visualization or visual impression or the worksheet. So some things, there's a couple things that one thing that we added because of visual impression, and I'll show you that in a minute, but there's another tool that's been available inside a worksheet for quite some time. So I'm going to go ahead and make a change to the drawing. So if I go back and look at my worksheet here quickly, trying to think where my chair is. Okay, I've got a stool in here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually change that stool out because the customer has decided that they don't like the legs on it. And we're actually going to put a cylinder base in here instead. If you guys remember when I launched into Worksheet, that the chairs actually had a wire frame on them. So let me show you a quick, easy way that we're going to be able to change this. So I'm going to do a block replace. I'm sure that many of you have used this. Oops. My block replace is over here. Where'd it go? Right here. So I'm going to go ahead and select the part. So right now we're working with stool 1. And I'm going to replace it with stool 2. So I'm just going to simply type in the part. It's actually going to search through the catalog index. As I type this in, it's going to search and find me the part that I want. So we're going to go ahead and do this one right here. Okay, now that I have done that, I'm going to tell it to apply to all objects, and I'm going to hit replace. And I always like this one because visually it shows you that it actually changed that. But I am at the part of my project where I have actually gone in and fully specified my worksheet. Because if I come back here, this is the worksheet that I had been working on with this drawing. And at this point, this worksheet is technically done. I've done my pricing, I've done all my finishes, and now they made a change. Well, I could go in here and change it on the worksheet, but because to me, I want that drawing to be the master, our next step would typically be to generate a new worksheet. So we're going to go ahead and generate the worksheet. And we're going to say OK here, and let's do this again. And I'll just give it a different name because if I don't give it a different name, it is simply going to overwrite the existing worksheet that it just created from here. And what would happen then is all that hard work I just did, it's going to be lost. So we're going to give it a different name. Let's open up the worksheet file. And here it is. Okay, so now it's going to contain the new chair that I asked, or that I placed within the drawing. So now I look at this and I'm like, I have to start all over again. I have no finishes, I have nothing selected in here. But if I look at the worksheet that I had originally, everything was done. So what do? There's a function called update against worksheet. So I can, hold on here. Define. The icons are so small for me, I can't see, sorry. So it says update against worksheet. I don't know how many of you have ever used this or even were aware of this. I can at any time take one worksheet and update it against another worksheet. So I can go out here and I can select my complete. Oops, hold on a second here. I need to be. Now let's go find it. And I'm going to go ahead and say OK. It has now pushed in all my finishes I had. And if I scroll, let me just down here to the bottom. This life chair was not in my original worksheet, so it's actually flagged it as something that I still need to work on. And if you remember, we talked a little bit about validate. If I look, the stool I need to specify, and this is the chair down here, because I need to pick options on it. So once again, I can use validate to help me locate some potential issues within my worksheet. You'll also notice that the little check mark that would normally be there when things are fully specified has now turned into an icon telling me to update against the catalog. Remember, we only updated against another worksheet. Depending on when that worksheet was created, there may be finishes that may not be applicable anymore, potentially. Pricing. The pricing may not be applicable anymore. So that we need to make sure for you to have that accurate specification that the finishes are correct and that your pricing is correct. So obviously the next thing that we would do, and we always tell you to do this before you send out that final worksheet, is to update it against the catalog. So we're just going to hit the update button, and all my check marks are back. So I saved myself a lot of time, potential errors within this whole specification process, because I didn't have to re-specify anything. So if there's one really strong tip from here, it's use that worksheet or update worksheet against an existing worksheet and pull over that information so you do not have to recreate the wheel every time you generate a new worksheet. Okay. One of the other things that I wanted to make sure that I showed you, once again, changes within the that workflow or the design process or the project process. When you are in visual impression, so let's just launch into visual impression for a moment. And this is one that often people don't realize, and they end up having to go back and redo work that they could repurpose. When you are working in visual impression, you know that the most you can do as far as changes in there is going to be with the with finishes, any of the objects and stuff that are available through the room side, like if the accessories, you can change all of those, you can move those around, but you can't really do anything with the furniture in here. I can't make changes to, like I said, to the furniture in here. So, boy, those are, I didn't even realize how kind of bold those are. Let's pick some fabrics real quick here, and we'll just do silver. Okay, so it's not just about the finishes. I'm going to make some changes here to the architectural side of this, so let's just go ahead and put some kind of carpeting on the floor and maybe some colors on the wall. Because you guys, you'll go into visual impression and you'll make everything look so nice. I've got, what I want on the floor. I've got colors on the walls. I've got, stuff hanging on the walls. I've got my architecture set up, my windows, my doors, everything set up. And then a furniture, something changes with the design itself. And you've got to make that change in the drawing, and you're like, I'm just going to lose everything that I just worked on. No, you're not. So let's go ahead and change some things real quick, as I said. Let's go to here. Let's just put some colors in here. I just want you to be able to see visually that what it's done here. And we'll just throw something up here on the ceiling. And we'll do a texture. And then I'm actually going to go to the room, and from my top 2D, I'm going to throw in maybe a door. And there's a method behind this madness. I want to be able to show you some stuff here. So let's go to Windows, and we'll put a couple windows in here. Okay. Okay, let's go to our 3D view. And I just want to quickly add. And then I'm going to just duplicate this real quick. So if you didn't know, I can duplicate windows. And then I'm just going to kind of move them down a little bit. All right, so I'm going to go back to 3D view. Nothing glamorous, nothing pretty. Just wanted to make some changes here for you. Let me go ahead and hide this away. All right. And I'm actually going to save this out, okay? So I'm going to save this off as a worksheet. All right. And we're going to close out a visual impression. And I'm going to discard this because I'm not saving it back to the worksheet or to the drawing. So remember the stools, these lovely stools. We're actually going to change them back. So, because the customer said, oh, just like me when I went into visual impression, wasn't impressed with those stools. So we're going to go ahead and change those back to the original wireframe. So once again, let's use our block replace. Another tool for increased productivity and efficiency. So let's just select stool. We're going to go ahead and do stool 1 again. Okay. We're going to do all objects. Let's replace. And there's our stools back. Yay! So now I want to show them that scene that I was just working on with these new stools. As I said, people often think they have to start from scratch, but you don't have to. We added a functionality to CAP and Giza that allows me to update the drawing against a visual worksheet. This could also be used at the end of a project. So if you want to keep your drawing and your specification in sync, basically, when I am done, if I want to store the finish information and all of that in the drawing, I could actually update against the visual worksheet and push all that information into the drawing at the end of that project cycle. So let's update against the visual worksheet. And I think we called it and I'm going to start. And I'm going to launch visual impression. And I'm hoping, although I don't hear them, I'm hoping there's some oohs and ahs. This is how you work with this. So if you have to make changes, use the update against visual worksheet. So the work that I just did, the architecture, everything that I just did in here has been saved. So now all I have to do is come in here and change finishes. So the update against visual worksheet that is available in CAP, and yes, for my Giza users, it is also available inside of Giza. One other thing that I do want to show you, because I'm actually coming towards the end of what I have to present. So one thing that I want to be able to show you is the fact that I now have pushed these finishes and pushed this information into the drawing. There's this feature's actually been inside of the software for a while, but after I've done all this work, if I don't want to store that finish information in the drawing, because if I do a takeoff right now, you guys know whether you're Cap or Giza, because I've pushed this in here. When I generate that worksheet, the finishes and everything that I selected are going to be part of that worksheet if I were to do a takeoff. There is a function called strip options. So as you're working with the tools, whether you're updating the drawing against a worksheet, whether you're in visual impression launched from the drawing and you accidentally save finishes back to the drawing, don't panic, because there's a very easy way to be able to do that. There's a big yellow box with a red X in here, and what that will do is allow you to strip the options. So if I were to come in here and just window around this, it will remove any of the option finishes that I had actually selected. So if I were to go back into visual impression and view this, any of the finish changes that I made would actually be gone. So trying to think if I have anything else that I need to cover with you. I think hopefully it wasn't too overwhelming. I think that we covered a lot of information here. As I said, my biggest thing with this is that I truly want to educate our users as much as possible to really understand the benefits of what they have. Often, as I said, people are not, because they haven't had the time to be properly trained or formally trained on anything, you lose a lot of this. I mean, you only know what the person that you learned from actually learned when they did their training. So some other things, we are on social, and we do have weekly tips and tricks for those of you. We have Tip Tuesday and Knowledge Wednesday, and if nothing else to do, we have some Sunday reading for you. Obviously, if you're looking for more information on any of our products, you can visit us at 2020spaces.com. Some things just to remind you of: training available through 2020. We also have a very extensive knowledge center that you guys have access to 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And also our 2020 community that we always encourage our users to join. There is a lot of information out there, and it is nice to be able to share information with your peers. So just want to make sure you keep that in mind. And I thank you very much. And if you need anything else, reach out to us either through the web or through the email. Thank you guys